Just watch me now.
Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there and welcome back to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, and today we have Jared Bednar, the head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, on the program, and I couldn't be happier to interview Bedsy. Jared and I go way back to 1992 season in Spokane, where I stepped foot in the ECHL for the first time, and he was a 19-year-old in that league, and he really took me under his wing. He was somebody that we just kind of connected with, and although we didn't play together long, Jared was somebody that left an impression on me, and he went through his career, which we cover, a 9-year professional career. We talk about his very first year of pro down in the East Coast Hockey League, playing for the Huntington Blizzard, a brand new team there where he was astounding minus 82 on the season. And we talk about his thought process there as being a player, and what he thought his trajectory was going to be to become an NHL player. And so we chronicle that quite well, and his championship there as a player and winning the Kelley Cup, his up and downs to the AHL and the ECHL, and then his decision to become a coach back in South Carolina, where he spent the majority of his playing career. And Jared is just so approachable. He's so easygoing. For a guy who leads an NHL organization as well as he does, there's not an ounce of pretentiousness with him, and I think that comes through loud and clear with this interview. He is really transparent. He talks about that first season in Colorado, which was one of the most dismal seasons in NHL history to be a part of as a first-year NHL coach. Talked about what it was like to work through that, and now to be a part of an organization that has grown with him to be one of the perennial Stanley Cup favorites, and looking forward to this year to seeing what they can do in the Stanley Cup playoffs when they start back up again. So this was an amazing interview. I really hope that you enjoyed as much as I did, to be able to talk as candidly as Jared did about his career as a player and his thought process as a coach, and what his philosophies are with the Colorado Avalanche was an absolute privilege, and I thank him for being here. But without further ado, I bring you Mr. Jared Bednar. All right, today we have an amazing guest, old teammate of mine from, way back in '92. Cross paths there, and now head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, and Jared Bednar. Thanks so much for joining us here in Up My Hockey.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pods. Good to be on.
Yeah, no worries, man. So it's so fun. Like, one of the best things I like about this, Bedsy, is digging into guys that, I've known or played with or whatever, and like doing the research, just kind of see what happens, right? Because your rap sheet looks similar to mine. A lot of places played as a player, a lot of places played as a coach. You cross paths with all these people. It's impossible to keep up with all the guys that you're buddies with, and then you go back and look, and it's like, holy smokes, man, this guy's been a lot of places and played with a lot of guys that I know. So I wouldn't mind starting with you as a player. Everyone knows you as a coach, but I obviously knew you as a player, and a lot of guys knew you as a player. Talk about like Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and getting into WHL there and starting with the Blades. How did that all start for you?
Yeah, so I was in Yorkton for a short time. My dad was RCMP, so even as a young kid, I was moving every couple of years. So I was born in Yorkton and grew up mostly in Humboldt. All my minor hockey career, my dad was stationed there twice. So all my grade school, middle school, and then back again, even in high school, was mostly spent in Humboldt.
Gotcha.
So growing up there, I just the team of the town was the Humboldt Broncos, and that's kind of when I was young. I set my sights on trying to play for them, and was watching them, all through the winter, while we were playing games, and then head out to the arena there and watch the Broncos play. So that was kind of step one, and then you get a little bit older and you start watching. In the Western Hockey League, the closest team for me was the Blades, and I was watching guys like Kelly Chase and Koshers and Kaminsky's, and that was kind of my era there, watching those guys play, and then wanted to set my sights on playing in the WHL as early as I could. So I ended up playing a year. I went away for AAA midget because there wasn't a team in Humboldt. I went to Tisdale for a year, and then played a year for the Broncos, and then made the jump to the Western Hockey League, and kind of bounced around a little bit. I started my first year in Saskatoon, and then went back to Humboldt for a little bit, and then headed out west to camp in Tacoma, and ended up settling for a couple of years there in Spokane when I played with you. And then my 20-year-old year, I bounced around a little bit too. You know how it is as a 20-year-old, and I went from in a big trade to Medicine Hat that involved a number of the teammates that came to you there, like Brian McCabe and guys like that.
Yeah.
I think it was a 4-for-4 or 5-for-5 deal.
It's a big deal.
And then eventually ended up in PA my final year.
Right. So wow, I mean, I didn't see Humboldt on there. I mean, I have to touch on what the hockey world was shook by there. The anniversary just passed. I mean, how did that crash affect you as being a guy that grew up there, played on that team? It must have had even a greater impact on you, I assume.
Yeah, well, everyone that's especially people that played out west, and those roads and the bus trips, and just playing junior hockey or college hockey in general, when you're traveling around, all players can relate to what that team was going through, and you spend a lot of time on the bus, and that was devastating, that crash, and it affected so many people that I know. I have friends that their son was in the crash. He survived. He's in a wheelchair now and doing well. And I've gotten to know, a number of the surviving players and family members and of some of the victims. And it was, it was hard. It was hard for a long time. I was really impressed with the way that the hockey community and the world came together to support the people of the Bronco families, the town, the community, so I was impressed by that. I admire the strength of those kids. It's amazing. Like I said, I've gotten to know some of them, and they're an inspiration to all of us. Just incredibly strong kids, and reaching out and helping in so many different ways. And I kind of got involved and started a golf tournament, Humboldt Bronco Memorial Golf Tournament there a couple of years ago, along with Brian Munns. He's a TSN broadcaster for the Jets, and a local girl from Humboldt, Lori Wofford, that I went to high school with, and trying to raise some money for the team, and we started some scholarships and just kind of spreading it around the community in memory of all the people that were affected. And it's been a humbling experience, but it's pretty powerful. You get back there every year, and like I said, I'm just inspired by the strength of those families and the kids that survived. They're truly amazing.
Well, you're a father yourself. I mean, I am too, and my kids are now playing. And it's one thing to be the guy in the bus, like we've been the guy in the bus. Now we're in a scenario where our kids maybe could have been the one in the bus. So I mean, we have that double way to relate, which hits in a way more dynamic way. And then for me personally, it shook me, but it shook me even more because I played with Chris Joseph, and his son Jackson was on that bus and unfortunately didn't make it. And Jackson was running around the locker room when we were in Germany together, like I had met him. And so like when you have a guy that you've been around and played with and respected and just know what he was like as a father, and then to have that happen to him, like it was, I tear up just even thinking about it right now, like it's crazy what those families went through, and amazing, Bedsy, that you were able to help. I tried to help too. I got Chris's jersey up and Jackson's jersey up in our bar in Fort McMurray. Want to hang them there kind of forever. And we have a little fundraiser too every year to try to in Jackson's honor. And, you just try, I guess, the best you can, right, to support what went on there. And I know those guys, those families will never be the same. Like, I've talked to Chris, and it's tough, but it did bring us all together, I guess, in a positive sense, and I think we really appreciate what we have. And you said, like, the strength, and those guys that were survivors are such inspirations. And what a tragedy, though. Amazing.
Yeah, it's and some of the families, like the Boulay effect, Green Shirt Day, like all the things that sort of came out of it. A lot of people doing a lot of good after that accident. So that's, the positive that comes of it, but certainly tough times, and still continue. But, everyone's getting through it and making the most of it, and reaching out, trying to help the, organ donation. And it's incredible what some of the families have done, and some of the money they've raised for really good causes.
That's amazing. That's awesome. You go back there. I really think that's cool. So playing in Humboldt, or even, I'm looking at your stats, and like, I always remembered you as, I thought you were more of a puck moving. We never played together long. I got called up there as a 15-year-old. I played in playoffs. You took me under your wing, kind of. I don't even know if you remember really doing it, but we both like cards, and you just kind of made me feel comfortable. You're definitely one of those guys that made my arrival there feel good. And by the way, thank you for that. I don't know if I ever thanked you for that. And maybe that was a testament of what you had to move on with. But I always remembered you as a guy that was more of an offensive kind of mover and shaker. And I look at your penalty minutes, and like, you kind of looked like you were a fighter everywhere you went. Was that more what you rested your kind of laurels on? Were you a guy that liked to drop the gloves more than maybe put it in the net?
I think that was done out of necessity. Like, you're right. Like, I think you kind of change and you adapt a little bit and do what you can to survive on certain teams or make certain teams. And it changed a little bit for me at every level that I played at. So in junior, I was a little bit of a late bloomer, like, you came into the Western Hockey League at 16, right?
Yeah, I just turned 16, so it's kind of my 15-year-old year was when I first came up there with you guys.
Right, and I didn't play in the Western Hockey League till I was 18. So I had the year of SJHL under my belt, and made the step, and then went back. And but when I was 19, or my 20-year-old year especially, some of the teammates we had there, Valeri Bure and Maxime Betts and yourself, and like, I found myself in a situation where I was running a power play, and it just, simple breakout pass or dump it back to the half wall from the point, and you were getting points, so as I kind of moved on in my career, I put up pretty good numbers in junior. And as I kind of moved on in my career, I found it more and more difficult. Like, I just wasn't talented enough to continue to put up those numbers. And I was put in some of those situations a little bit in the ECHL, secondary power play, turned into just more of a shutdown, stay-at-home defenseman, penalty killer, tried to use my whatever puck moving ability I had just to get us in and out of the zone. And then I kind of, fell into this group of guys in South Carolina, where I played almost my whole career, and started my coaching career there. And I was really tight with those guys. We were together for 5, 6, 7 years. And they became my second family. So, I was we had a number of guys, but I was one of the sort of protectors of that group, and took a lot of pride in that. And it got me to the American League for a little bit. It got me to the International League for a little bit. And I was just more of a, 12 forward, 6 or 7 D. I played, both forward and D at the American League and International League level, and just tried to do what I could to survive and help the team in any way. And part of that was the rugged aspect of the game.
Interesting. So maybe let's talk on that a little bit. So, because like you said, you bounced around a little bit, in junior, and then up at pro. Like, when you're like, how was that adverse? Did you feel like it was adversity at the time? Was it hard to kind of like go to another city, or I mean, maybe even as junior, like, were you focused on that? Yeah, I want to be a pro player, and that was where you wanted to get to, and you were just prepared to kind of go through the wall to do that. Was that kind of your mindset?
Yeah, it was for sure. Once I was playing in the Western Hockey League, you know how it is. Everyone thinks they're going to the NHL, and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to get drafted. I'm going to go to camp. Might play a couple of years in the minors, but I'm going to work and get to the NHL. Well, I had a bit of a different path. Like I said, as a late bloomer, 20-year-old year was starting to really come into my own, and put up some good numbers, and I had the toughness and some things that I felt like I'd be able to carve away into playing in the NHL or American League to start. And so my first year pro was a big wake up call. I didn't know anything about the ECHL and where I would go if I didn't go to the American League. I went to American League camp, didn't make it, and they said, "Well, where are you going to play?" And I said, "I have no idea. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have
Right.
anything." So the coach said, "Well, there's ECHL teams looking for players. Why don't you go here?" So I went down, um, you know, played for a while, didn't have any idea. I was out in Greensboro, North Carolina, West Virginia, and I'm just trying to find a team to play on. So a 20-year-old kid basically driving or flying around to cities I've never heard of down south in the US.
Right.
So that was a really strange time. And then I played a couple of years. I got on this team in Huntington, West Virginia. I played there for a couple of years, and interesting story. Like I ended up meeting my wife there, and we've been married now 20 years and
Isn't
have
that
two
crazy the way
kids.
that
So
happens? That's so
I
nuts.
was
Right?
just there for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And I was living in I guess a duplex, and I got a call one day, I think the start of my third year pro, and I had really grown to love West Virginia and Huntington, the town I played in, and the guys that were there. My wife, girlfriend at the time, was there, and I got a call from the coach, and he said, "Hey, we just traded you to Charleston, South Carolina, to the Stingrays," so I was crushed. And my best friend was living with me. We'd been together for a couple of years, and another big rugged guy, and we just hit it off. And he says, "Can you hand the phone to Dan, my roommate?" So I handed the phone to my roommate, and I thought, well, he's just going to tell him that he just traded me or whatever. And he answers the phone, and he says, "Hey, we traded you to South Carolina." So he goes, "All right," hangs up the phone. I was crushed, and he goes, "I guess we better get packing. We're leaving," and we were going to drive down there. So me and my roommate head down there, and the rest was kind of history. I ended up like locking into South Carolina and just playing and having fun. Met a great group of guys, but my goal was always to play as a high level as I could play,
Right.
just to try and push myself. And so what I did is I went to South Carolina for a little bit. Rick Vive was my head coach,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I
long
saw Rick
time
Vibe was
lead.
there. Yeah.
So he gets me in contact. We had two affiliates, one in Buffalo, which was Rochester, and one in Toronto, which was St. John's, and for the baby Leafs. So he gets me to camp. I go to camp and I end up
Which
making the
camp?
team, and the St. John's
Oh,
team.
you went to St. John's?
Yeah, and it was the year Mark Hunter was there.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was there
so
after.
yeah,
So
you
like
came
I checked that out.
in
That
the
was when I got
playoffs, I
traded to
think.
Toronto from Florida, and was with
Yeah,
the big club until they didn't make the playoffs, and they sent me down for the AHL playoffs. So I was with St. John's
right.
there that same year you were there, but you weren't there when I was there because I guess you had
Yeah,
been sent down or something.
yeah. So what happened was, I played there, and had gotten some guys like yourself, and they said, like, this is where you slot in our lineup. And I think we were going in to play Hamilton or something the first or second round, and he said, "Hey, like, do you want to go down and play so you stay ready, and if we need you, we'll call you up?" I said, "Yeah." Like, that's where I felt the most at home in my career, in with the Stingrays, just because of the guys that I knew. And they're, to this day, they all still, the group that I played with, most of them still live down there in Charleston where I live, and we hang out all the time. And I really wanted to go back and help, so I went down, and we ended up winning the Kelley Cup that year.
As a
And
player.
yeah, and so
Sweet.
what happened? We won it on the road, and I got a call, and it was Billy Waters, I think, was the
Yeah.
assistant GM for, and he called me and said, okay, we're playing game 6 or 7 tonight, and if we win, like you can come back up. And I think you guys lost to Hamilton maybe in game 7 or something.
Yeah.
So I ended up not going back up, but that was home. I'd leave to go play with the baby Leafs. I'd come back the next year.
What'd you think of the Rock, Bedsy?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it was just a great experience to go, play a year or two, different sort of culture. And I mean, it was awesome.
Isn't
Yeah.
it like it's a
Great.
whole new culture? I tell people that, I mean, like
It's
being
like being
from
a different
Canada,
country.
right? And being
Yeah.
from the West Coast, like you would think you're in a different country. Just
Yeah.
the way it is, the way the people are, like it was amazing. I really enjoyed my time there. I had success there. The problem with being there though was that you were isolated. Nobody was watching,
Yeah.
right? You know
Yeah.
what I mean, like the big club rarely came in. There was no scouts ever there, so you can, everyone's looking at the score sheet, I guess. But it was before the time of video and AHL TV and all this stuff, right? Like it was,
Right.
you were just out there. So that was, as far as like getting to where you wanted to go, I'm not sure it was the best spot, but boy, the people were great. Everyone treated me great. Still have contacts there. Actually, Chris Beersford said hi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he sent
Yeah.
me a text that say hi to Jared. So I'm glad to get him in the episode. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed my time there too. But I want to backtrack just a bit because this to me
Sure.
is funny, and I'm sure you'll have something to say about it. I was looking and I thought that Hockey DB must be wrong, right? I'm like, there's no way this is actually right. So your
Yeah.
first year pro, you go to the AHL. Like you said, you don't have a team. You end up landing in Huntington for the Blizzard. And I saw that you were minus 82. I was like, there's no way anybody is
Yeah.
minus 82 in a season. So I look up that team and like there was guys that were minus 90 something on that team. You had like, what I write down? 14
I
wins
was
all
the
year.
worst. Yeah. That was it. And that was what I was going. That was my first year pro.
Yeah.
That was the year I come out of the Western League. I'm thinking like I'm going to the NHL or at least American League. And I went down and I actually tried out for a team in Greensboro. I just went down there and, uh, I think Maxie, our coach in Spokane, is the one that got me down there and knew one of the coaches. And they just kind of had this older veteran team. The league was old. Like that was a sort of a rough and tumble league at the time. So they had their like core power play guys and then all these older guys. I come in as a 20-year-old kid. Now it's more of a developmental league, right?
Right.
So I get bounced to Huntington and I'm like, yeah, I'll go. Like I didn't know where to go. So they said, well, Huntington's looking for players. Well, they were a new team. The league was expanding to try and I went in there and it was, they just didn't have players, they were picking up all the other teams, guys that got cut, which is basically meant me. And I went in there and it was a tough year. Like we lost 16-1, I think 3 or 4 games into, the team that I got cut from, and I was like -8, and I was like, oh, and like it's just devastating. Honestly, I felt like my career, everything I worked for my whole life through 20 years, I was losing it. And then, miraculously, things changed, new coaches, new players, and the next year we made the playoffs, and I started to feel at home in Huntington. And by the time that happened, I got traded to South Carolina. So it was like, that was one of those situations.
How was
where
that though? I mean, we got to spend like a little more time there. Like seriously, you're 20 years old, like you're there, you're getting crushed every night. It looks like, right? You're getting spanked around. Like there must have been a lot of soul searching that year of like, where the hell am I? Is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Right?
Yeah. The first part was like, I got to get out of here, and resurrect my career, save my career. And then, the organization hired some good people, and I didn't know, like I was lost. I wanted to play hockey, and I just wanted to play at a higher level as possible. That, at that time there was some European teams that were like, do you want to come over and play? And I didn't know anything about Europe either. I mean, I grew up I didn't know what I didn't know. So rural Saskatchewan, and I didn't know anyone that had ever gone to Europe. Like I wanted to go to the NHL,
Right.
and so I was just, I didn't really have anyone to give me advice. My parents didn't know. They just supported whatever I was doing and knew I wanted to play. And they hired new coaches and brought in new players and some guys that I was familiar with, like from the Western Hockey League. And I'm like, these guys are good players. Like they can help us. And we started to go my second year. And it was just one of those things where, by the time I started feeling at home and thinking we were getting someplace, I got traded, which ended up being the best thing for
Right.
myself personally, for my career. It's funny how you think at the time it's going to be a disaster, it's the end of the world, and then you go with an open mind and things just find a way of working out. It's just
Yeah.
sticking with it and grinding it out. And
Yeah.
so
No, good for
that's
you,
where we
man. I
were.
could just imagine, like, we've all been 20 at one point, and I remember my 20-year-old year, and I mean, different league, but like, it's all new, right? I mean, all of it's new.
Yeah.
And then when you get into that scenario and, the dash 82, that could have been like, holy smokes, man, what's going on? But so when you get
You
called
go,
up, how did that work? Because you have to relate to that now. And I think that's maybe why you're so successful behind the bench. I mean, like being a guy that, uh, was bounced around, got traded, knows what it's like to come into a new environment and have a role. What was that like when you went to the AHL? Like, did you know what you were there to do, what role you were supposed to fill? Was that communicated to you?
Yeah, I think it was like my first year that I went was with Mark Hunter, and he's a straight shooter, and it was laid out to me pretty clearly, and I was a little older too. I think I was like 24, probably third
Yeah.
or fourth year pro already, and so I was confident in what it was that I could do, even
Mm.
though it was a level up. It was the same. I was used to playing against older players and guys that were in their mid 20s and that. And even the American League, I think our team was probably a little younger than the team I played on in South Carolina. Um, and it was, this is what you're going to play: fourth line wing or in the third pair D, and you're gonna have to play rugged and provide some toughness and look out for guys. And we had some good mentors on that team there, and I found the teammates is the guys that make you feel comfortable, give you confidence in your role, and I did, I was pretty sure I knew what I was supposed to do, but I got better at it over my first 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years pro.
Yeah.
And then when I kind of lost the interest in as much as the rugged play, that's when I kind of got the coaching opportunity and decided to sort of hang them up and get into a new
Gotcha.
passion.
You
Yeah.
mentioned mentors. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but somebody came to mind there that maybe you were thinking of. Who did come to mind when you were thinking of a mentor in St. John?
Greg Smith.
Right. Yeah. Bird
Yeah.
dog. Hey.
The bird dog. See, because when you started playing a rugged role like that, I thought I had it all figured out. I fought a lot in junior and I did all these things. But it basically was, what are you, where's the standard on what you're going to let the other team get away with, And I thought I had it all figured out. Then I went and played with some guys in Huntington, and I was like, I guess I don't. Like, they just had a way stricter standard as to when you needed to step up or say something or do something on the ice. So they taught me that. And then I thought I was, and Bird Dog just had this standard that was like, no one touches pods and no one touches this guy, and you go do something. And it just kind of escalated, but he gave me a lot of confidence, and it was something that I needed at the time because I was trying to break into that role, or into that league and stay in that league and be successful and hopefully work to the NHL. And some of the standards that he had set for what was acceptable and what was not acceptable, um, And Huntsy had he was real tough on guys and real honest, and he'd get in your face if you weren't doing it right or weren't doing what you're supposed to. There was no gray area, which that really helped me kind of moving forward in my career
Yeah.
and even into my coaching career.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Smitty, who we should acknowledge, is no longer with us. Rest in peace,
Yeah.
Bird. Had a fight with cancer there that he didn't win, but there was definitely no gray area with Bird, right? Like,
No.
and it was great. I mean, I was fortunate. I still don't know why. I wish I could talk with him, but he for whatever reason too, he liked me. Thank God, because I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but like I was somebody that he was fond of and would invite for lunch and stuff, and obviously you still have your run-ins with him even when you're kind of one of his guys because he lets you know what he's thinking. But it was interesting to be on a team with him and the experience that he had from the NHL and playing the role that he did and then really kind of he did embrace that role of being the elder statesman there and letting guys know, how he felt.
Yeah.
You can be your best or how to get to that next level. And
then there was we had some of those other like Gila who are captain, and like we just had there was a good balance because Bird could be a little bit over the top, but then those other guys were really, they just had a different approach, but really dialed in guys that kind of had a good balance to it. We had that fire and energy and sort of passion in Bird, and then we had the voice of reason and guys just do everything right in our leadership group. And it was, so you kind of just study both sides and everyone, it just had a way of working. I thought it was
Nathan Dempsey was there too. You didn't mention him, but like
exactly.
He stands out as a great story to me too, and somebody I'd love to interview here because just like Scotty Nickel, I interviewed him a little while ago. So Scotty Nickel, right, like didn't have a chance until 25 or maybe even 27, I think he got his first opportunity. Like if anyone was destined to be a career minor leaguer, like at that point it was him, like 5'10" or 5'9" even, right? And then ends up making the show and stays there for 10 years. And same with Demmer, right? Like he was down there like doing the right thing day after day after day, day after day. Finally somebody recognized it, gave him a chance, and he got his games in the show and made a nice career of it.
And it was in Toronto, which was great. He just grinded all the time. He just kept sort of refining his game. And Scotty's a great example because the year after I went to I ended up in Rochester with Scotty.
You played with him?
That's where, after my St. John's year, I went to Rochester and then went over to the IHL for a year before I went back. And I did the same thing. I was in Roch and I went down to South Carolina for a bit. I was back up. The only year I basically stayed away the full year was the following year when I was in Grand Rapids in the IHL, which was interesting too. Like, it was just a little bit different league than the American League, a little older.
Yeah.
I think I was probably 26, 27 by the time I played there. And then as the IHL folded, I went back to the ECHL and finished out.
Right. Yeah, no, that's how did you get accustomed to? I mean, hockey's nice because it doesn't take long to break in usually, like to a room. But it is a different. There's a social element there that's awkward, right? You come to a team, you don't know necessarily anyone, maybe nobody. There was times I didn't know like one guy. I didn't have an experience with anybody, and then you walk in there. Sometimes you're the youngest guy, sometimes you're not. But it's like that. That's a human side of the sport that doesn't get talked about very much, and like that comfortability within that locker room really matters of how well you're going to be able to play on the ice too.
For sure. And that's where I think you get these guys, the right leaders, and they just make you feel welcome right away, and you're just kind of sitting there observing and doing more watching and listening than talking, and you find a group that you guys are, even just one or two guys that can help, explain things to you. And it doesn't take long, and it can't take long. If you're going to be successful, you have to sort of find your role in that. And and then that comes from the coaching staff. and then more importantly, the more comfortable you are, that comes from the players for me, and their leadership abilities and how they make you feel comfortable in the room. And I've been really fortunate all the years that I played. There's so many good leaders that I played with, and um, they were awesome at getting our team together. So it was, that you take a little bit from all those guys that you played with, and you try to implement it in things that you do as a leader, whether it's a player or as a coach.
Right. So now through all that, I mean, through the ups and downs in the AHL and the IHL and the championship in the ECHL, at what point, if there was a point, can you figure that like maybe I'd like to coach at some point, or like starting kind of to sponge that aspect up? What was there a time for you, or was it just when the career was over?
Yeah, so it was when I went back from the IHL and started playing in South Carolina again for 2 or 3 years. I started thinking about it because Jason Fitzsimmons was our goalie. He's a Western Hockey League guy, played in Moose Jaw, and he hurt his back, and he became the assistant coach of our team in South Carolina. So he's one of my good friends and still lives down there, and he's the assistant coach, and I'm one of our captains and playing. And the league was changing rules and trying to get younger, and salaries were changing. And I wanted to be able to say that I played my career the same way, like just kept working to go to the next level. Now I knew I wasn't going to the next level. I was still playing with all the core guys that I loved and had a lot of respect for. And as some of them started to leave and I was still playing, Jason Fitzsimmons got the head coaching job, and he asked me if I wanted to coach. And I had planned on playing for another couple of years, and I lost a little bit of the passion and didn't want to like not be doing the things I did my whole career to be successful and sort of change again. So I stepped away from it, started coaching. And I didn't know how. I thought it might just be a transition. And almost immediately, once I started coaching and recruiting players to come there, and we started having, I fell in love with it. So I was assistant coach with him for 5 years, and then took over for 2. Um, we a great team. We were fortunate. We won a championship. Went to the American League. Put in some
Well, yeah.
time.
Whoa, slow down, slow
Yeah,
down. So, I mean, that's a big, like, so you're 30 years old. So you decide at
yeah,
that point, I think I got you at 30. Is that right? Were your first time assistant coaching there, right?
yeah. That's it.
So
Yeah,
you decide, which is ironic because that's when I decided to pull the pin on the pro career too. And I kind of
yeah,
maybe sounds like sort of the same idea. Could have played more, but I was just kind of not feeling it. I mean, and I ended up going to Japan and actually got a little bit of fire back. And I was like, you know what?
yeah,
I can still play this game. I want to play this game, and I want to do it at the top level. I'd kind of put the NHL on the back burner, and I got an opportunity to try out for Detroit with the Red Wings. Um, Unbelievable opportunity there. Babs was there, who I played with in Spokane. Ended up
yeah,
hurting myself though on like day 3. I really, geez, I think it was good. I would have had an opportunity to make that hockey team. And then from there, I was like, do I want to go to the AHL again and like ride the bus and, and like wait for that phone call and, cause I'd kind of done that, and I'm like, and for me, like there wasn't enough in the tank to do that. Right. And I'm like, no, I think this is it,
yeah,
but for you at 30, so you jump behind the bench, you do that for 5 years. Like 5 years is a half a decade. I mean, that's a long time, right?
yeah.
To do that. And like, while you're doing that, like, do you know, then you said you fell in love with it. Like, were you then now kind of shifted perspective from, like you said, you always wanted to be at the highest level when you were a player and you were working and working, like, were you developing your craft consciously to try and figure
Yeah.
out how do I get somewhere else?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as I figured out how much I loved it, then I really started working at it. And it's what the one conscious decision I made. And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, you didn't make the NHL as a player. Um, you're big enough. You could skate. You had some toughness, some skill. Like, why? You know. And I didn't know what I didn't know in some of the training aspects. Um, like I felt like there was more stones I could have, turned over. And maybe not as committed, wanted to party too much, like just those things probably kept me out of the NHL. So I just made a decision, like I wasn't gonna, I was going to put my best foot forward every day, and coach hard and coach with passion, and wherever, try to just do the right things by your players, and all the things that as a player that rubbed you the wrong way, you're going to fix them. Things that you like, you're going to keep doing them, and just educate myself. And that was almost immediate. So I just started, doing the best I could, and hiring good people around me. And then I got lucky. I got some great opportunities along the way, and had
That's
some
amazing.
good
So you,
teams.
like, during that 5 years, like, so you essentially, you start off with that mental conscious choice of being like Jared Bednar 2.0, essentially, right?
Yeah,
You're like, okay,
that's it.
we're going to try this a little different, right? I'm going to go all out here. I'm all in. And,
Yeah.
and I just want, I don't want to, I want to talk about that 5 years, because a lot of guys, even as players, right? And I'm sure you see that now, you want to be somewhere really fast, and we're not necessarily patient with the process, So like,
Yeah.
were you, how were you with that? Was that fine? Were you antsy? Were you trying to get out of there, or were you comfortable where you were at because you knew you had some more to learn at that point and from that spot?
Yeah, I was really comfortable where I was at, because that was home to me. I went there 8 years earlier as a player.
Right.
I had a home there, a wife. I was making do financially. I got into some real estate. I had my son when I was still playing. He was young, and I knew I wanted to make move. But my next step was be like, okay, I'm going to be a head coach someday.
Right.
And I'll make the move when need be. But 5 years, to me, that first 5 years kind of flew by, because you go through a year or two where you're still like, I want to play, and you're like and then you kind of get in coach mode, and there's a transition there from playing to coach, and it doesn't come immediate. You think like
Right.
a player, so it happened for me when it happened. It was probably at a good time. I had learned a lot, gained responsibility every year. And the head coach got an opportunity and still works for the Caps. That was our affiliation, the Washington Capitals. And he's one of their pro scouts and still lives in Charleston, and kind of found what he loves to do there. And I got hired as the head coach. And again, just really fortunate. Some of the players and leaders and guys that I had with me, um, it seems like when you're in the minors, you got you put the pressure on yourself to win, to get an opportunity. But I was just trying to be conscious to try and do the right things the right way, with the right work ethic, and keep learning. And I tell my players when I was in the minors all the time, like, my job as a coach isn't just to get you to the NHL. Like, because there's going to be a lot of guys that just go for an opportunity, play a couple games, and get sent back. Like, my job is to get you there, and then when you get there, that you have the ability and skill set and mental toughness to be able to stay and make a career out of it. And I was using that same logic for me, as a coach. Like, I didn't want to go to the next level and then not be successful and end up back, or I wanted to
Gotcha.
go and be able to be set up for success as I moved on.
Right. So you get that opportunity. You have a really good year your first year, and then you win it your second year. I mean, the first year you guys
Yeah.
went pretty deep in the playoffs. You'd won the Kelley Cup as a player.
Yeah.
Was there a learning process through that playoffs of being the man at the helm and getting that deep? And was there any lessons from that first year that helped you the second year?
Yeah. I think it was more of, see, at the ECHL level, you are the general manager, the coach, et cetera, et cetera.
You're
So
everything.
you decide on all your player personnel, and that was knowing, why I felt my first year. We were a really good team, and I think I want to say we had to play 5 playoff rounds to win. I think we lost in the 4th one. So we'd already like clicked off some opponents, and we ran in and lost to Cincinnati, which was the team that won. And their team was built differently than ours. And so we knew we needed to get better on the back end and in goal. And we had a dangerous group of forwards, but we just couldn't, we couldn't defend them well enough because they had the same type of group of forwards as we had. They were,
Right.
so we making some of those changes and just, again, just trying to take steps in all the different areas of your coaching, just different special teams, and just keep trying to learn and get better. And then we beat a really good Alaska team and ended up winning the.
Just a short break from this amazing conversation with Jared. And if you are enjoying the conversation, if you've enjoyed past conversations, if you like what we're all about here at Up My Hockey and the conversations that we're having, the topics that we're covering, please do what you can to share the podcast. That's how you can help me promote this. That's how you can help spread the word of what we got going on here, the amazing guests that we have, and the topics that we cover. So rate it on your platform that you're listening to this on, share it in your social media group, talk about it with your friends. And that's the way to get the word out here and get this awesome material out to more and more people. So once again, thank you so much for listening and for taking the time to share and promote the podcast. Now let's get back to Jared Bednar. Right. And with coaching, like there is, even at the developmental level, meaning like the ECHL or the AHL, guys that win there move on. And it's interesting because like you are supposed to be developing players. Sometimes developing players means that they're going to make mistakes and you have to run with some young guys and you have to do these types of things, which maybe isn't conducive to championships. But if you do get championships, players included, they get opportunities, right? So if you can get them to come together, they get opportunities. So you win and you get an opportunity. And I was a little bit surprised, but maybe not, that it was an assistant job that you decided to leave for. Can you walk through the mindset of that and how that works out of it? You said you loved South Carolina where you were. Obviously, you just won a championship. Your family's there, and now you're moving on. And that must have been a big choice for you.
Yeah, it was. It was really big, and I'll tell you why. Because at this point, I've got a couple young ones, and my wife's working. You don't make a ton of money coaching in the ECHL, and that was home. We had built a house, and we'd been there forever. And at the time, I was informed there was only a handful of coaches leaving the ECHL. Going to the American Hockey League. It wasn't easy to get out of there as a player, and it wasn't easy to get out of there as a coach at the time. Right. And you're seeing more and more like the league gain more respect because they work closer now with the NHL team, so they get to know you, so they filter you up. And but there wasn't many coaches leaving the ECHL as a head coach and going to the American League as a head coach. Like Bruce Boudreau was a guy that did it, but there was a handful. Yeah, there was a handful of guys making the jump, but not always head coach to head coach. It was just that was the natural progression at the time. Go as an assistant, and so that's what I did. I got Jim Playfair. He had coached the Calgary Flames. Abbotsford was starting a new Calgary affiliation, brand new team in there. I wanted to learn from a guy that had coached in the NHL, a guy that I felt like I clicked with right away from a personality standpoint, had a lot to learn. Went there as an assistant coach. And
did you interview for that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So you had to interview for that. So Jim Jim was responsible for putting together his own staff?
He was, yeah.
Gotcha.
And
so he's reaching out to whoever, and your name comes across his radar.
Yeah, and mutual friends kind of put us together, and we just kind of clicked right away. And the biggest part of that decision for me was there's sacrifice involved with the move, right? So I ended up actually doing 7 and maybe 8 years away from my family. So they stayed in Charleston because I'd said, like, I'm not, like, this is just temporary. Like, I'm going to put in 2 or 3 years as an assistant, and then I want to be a head coach. Like, that's what I want to do. I had been 5 years assistant and 2 as a head guy, and I said, I want to be a head guy. That's the path I'm going to take. So to pack up and move from South Carolina to go to Abbotsford, which is now Canada. My wife's American. Like there's a lot involved. Um, as an assistant coach in the American League, again, you're not getting rich. So you're, there's financial things going on. And we just thought, I had moved my whole life, so I said, let's just leave the kids, stay here. I'll leave for 7-8 months, come back. It'll be tough, but it's just a couple of years. Once I get a head job, sign a 3-year deal someplace or whatever, you can come,
Right.
or if you want to come, you can come. And we just were kind of making the decisions,
Right.
kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We didn't know.
Yeah.
And, which turns out a year later, I got a head coaching job in Peoria in the American Hockey League. So it's good. I'm glad I didn't pick everyone up for 7 months,
Right.
But there was a lot of movement there my first few years in the American League. So they stayed. My family actually didn't join me full time. It was easier in some places to visit more and have them come for the holidays and me get home and do that. But they didn't actually come until I got the job in Colorado a few years
Wow,
back.
that's crazy. And like,
Yeah.
there's always a story there too, right? Especially if you're married and you have kids, like the support and the understanding and the trust that goes along with that, and how hard it must be as a dad to make that choice to leave too, like, that you're not around there all the time. I mean, but there's sacrifice involved in success sometimes. And I'm sure that was one of the, as you've talked about, one of the big sacrifices of chasing that dream at that time, right? To be able to go and to Abbotsford, which couldn't be farther away from where
It's as
you were
far
leaving,
as you
right?
can get. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's opposite ends of the continent. That's
Yeah.
the thing. And, like, like my wife, they do all the heavy lifting. Like I just go coach, right? And then she's got a job, 2 kids, grinding, so people make a lot of sacrifices, give you a lot of opportunity to pursue your dreams, and that's why it's nice to get everyone together here now and sort of enjoy, like, how good the NHL is. It's the best league in the world, and you get treated like gold. There's so many fun things that come along with being a player or a coach in the NHL. It's nice to have the family together and be able to enjoy some of those things after grinding for so long.
100%. So yeah, I mean, how does that? I mean, it's a short term. I mean, you were assistant for 1 year. You mean under Jim? What was your mindset like going in there? You just are you just trying to do everything you can, obviously, to help him and to grow, or like, because I just find that interesting from the player standpoint. I know what it's like to be on the third line and want to be on the second line, but I don't really know what it's like to be an assistant coach yet want to be the head coach. I mean, how do you keep your own goals in mind while fulfilling the role that you're in right at that time?
Yeah, I didn't really have a problem with that. Like my thing was like, I'm going to do what I can. I know what my job is. I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And I was just trying like to help the team win. And then just learning as much as I could about how he handled it, how the process works. So big, would have been my demise in Peoria. I was a head coach and I was really, Jim had a different relationship with, say, Daryl. They had worked together forever. They'd coached together. He went down and he was like, "You're running the team." And I was used to doing the same thing in South Carolina for a long time. But then you get to the American League, and that's not the way it works. You got a general manager, assistant general manager, development guy, and everyone is like, they have their input on the way you deploy your players, the way you coach, and that was all foreign to me because that wasn't the way it was in South Carolina. It wasn't the way it was even in Abbotsford for us. And then, like Jim got direction from Daryl, and then he had freedom to to do what he felt was right for the players' development and their team, and then things kind of change and it kind of comes up on you fast, and that I probably wasn't the best that I could be. And I learned a lot from that experience in Peoria, which then helped makes me make some changes to try and have some success later on.
Cool. Yeah. So how did that job come about? You came on the radar there, a job came open and you threw your hat in the ring, or did they contact you? How does that world work?
Like anything else, it's connections. I didn't have a connection to Peoria. but Jim did. He had worked with Doug Armstrong already, and I guess they got talking. They were looking for a coach. Jim recommended me. We went and talked, and then they started doing their homework, and I got hired in there. Kevin
Awesome.
McDonald, and yeah, and it didn't work out, but it's again, I think that was really good for me, for later, for following
Right.
years. And
That's a good
every
story though there, right?
relationship is different, so
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
And good for Jim and good for you, because like those connections matter. And I've said that. I mean, it's amazing how many guys you talk to and their stories. And it's like you say connections, but the connections are you doing a good job for somebody somewhere and earn the trust of somebody, like that helps, right? So you doing a good job for Jim there in Abbotsford. He wants to go to bat for you and try and give you an opportunity to do what you want to do, which is be a head coach. And he connected that dot for you and you stepped into it. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, and then you just try and pay it forward, like
Yeah.
everyone that works, you try to get them in the role that they want to be in and that they can have success in, and then whatever,
Yeah.
guys that work for you, with you again, the more success you have, the more opportunities that open up for
Yeah.
everybody.
Did you get fired? You say it didn't go well. Do you just mean like you didn't like the record, or did you actually get fired from that job?
I got let go from that job after my second year. We had a tough finish to the season, and they let me go, which then, so we touched on the minus 82 year as a player and going, oh gosh. So now I step into my first AHL head coaching job and I get fired a couple years after. And on paper, there was 8 or 9 American League jobs open, and I had one of the confidential directories. And I don't have an agent, and I'm looking at general managers, and I don't know any of them because I didn't play at that level where I'm running in the same circles as
Right.
most of these guys. So I just would call, Philadelphia. I called Paul Holmgren, who was a GM, and said, hey, I see you have an AHL job open. And he said, actually, we've already filled it. We just haven't announced it. Okay, thanks. And that's the way it went. Everyone was full. So
Yeah.
I stepped back and became an assistant coach again with an old teammate of yours, Brad Larson, hired me to coach in Columbus's organization as an assistant coach. So I stepped back for a couple of years, 3 years, I think, and was an assistant again.
So how did that? So I mean, which that just seemed like almost like a little dream team there, right? You got Lars as the head job, and you're assistant with Nolan Pratt, and Nolan's with you now. Nolan's also an ex teammate of mine. Like that's really wild, actually. 3 ex teammates of mine all together, working the AHL. How did that come to fruition? Was it you were picking up the phone, trying to get a head job? Head jobs weren't full. And then is that when the phone starts ringing for you? Like, so Brad's trying to fill up his guys and he's interviewing you, or did you contact Brad?
Yeah, I reached out to them. I think like my assistant GM now, actually in Colorado, Chris McFarland, was the assistant GM for Columbus and was running the American League team. And I dealt with them with players on call-ups and send-downs from the ECHL, and we had talked. So I think that he might have put my name into Brad, and then Brad was like, yeah, I'll talk to him, and then we kind of hit it off and he hired me. But Brad had the final say with Chris and who they were going to hire. And it was a good fit because Lars was, had been coaching as an assistant for a couple years, and, we're, similar age, and, just similar philosophies. And, so the 3 of us hit it off right away. And so I was there as an assistant with him until, again, I wasn't in a rush to get anywhere. Like, I think you want to focus on the job you're doing and do the best job you can, and people will take notice and give you an opportunity, or you can search out an opportunity that you want. And he got the call and got assistant coaching job in Columbus. He's still there, and I took over as the head guy for a couple of years.
Right. I remember we talked at the coaches conference there, or whatever, almost a year and a half ago now, and it just sounds like that was just a ton of fun, that crew, right? Like that time being together, like being in the coaches room together, and like you said, everyone's kind of the same age, from the West. You guys are all from the West, had similar experiences there, and that must have just been a real good time. And you know, which is interesting because, like you said, everything happens for a reason sometimes too, right? I mean, like maybe that was exactly what you needed coming out of Peoria. You know, not having the experience you wanted. You said you had some lessons that you're able to take with you there, and now you end up in this with this little trio of young guys who are driven and want to be the best coaches they can be, and probably feeding off each other the whole time.
For sure. And you know, everyone's got to be good at what they do, but you have to be able to get along. As you think about the time that you spend with your coaches, right? There
Yeah.
has to be a sort of a chemistry there and a fit there, and you learn that. And you know, we all had a lot of responsibility. We all had our input. It was just basically bouncing ideas off of each other. And you know, Lars carried the hammer, and we just supported him in that. But you want to be involved in the decision making. That's how you learn. And we experiment, and we had some really good teams there. And a lot of those guys that we coach there are all playing for Lars now in Columbus.
Yeah. And is that super rewarding as a coach, especially in that system, like to feel like you've done a good job, regardless of maybe the wins, losses, that these guys are moving on and getting to where they want to be.
Oh, absolutely. When you see them, guys go up and then sort of carve out their role, and you talk to the coaches. You're coaching the minors, now they're playing in the NHL, and you're talking to the coaches, and you get talking about where these guys have improved and how good they are doing this or that, and you just remember stressing all that stuff to them when they're in the minors, and the consistency part of it. And it's really it is very rewarding. That's the number one reason. The competitive part of it is one thing, wanting to win and be in the fire, and you know, as a coach, that's one thing. And then, but the reward, as big a reward, is for sure seeing, you know, these guys grind and work to sort of achieve their goals and to carve out a role, and then to seem to be able to do that and get there. Those first few years when you see them in NHL is awesome.
That is
Especially
super
getting
cool.
back with them and talking with them in passing in the hallways and the arenas and stuff. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. You mean, and I guess you kind of do that now on a different level. I mean, being the head guy, you want guys within your organization at the top level of the organization to now improve and step into, you know, their greatest abilities, right, into their
Right.
potential. But as the guy in the AHL, when you were there for a while, since we're talking on there, like what were these players that did go on and have success, these players that did kind of understand what you were putting down, you know, like what do you see in those guys that were able to make that leap and able to make that step? Is there any intangibles you can point to where did you even maybe see it beforehand, like, okay, this guy's got what it takes, like maybe he's gonna be able to make the step?
Yeah. Well, I think where a lot of the adjustment comes in the American League is the guys that you're getting there, those draft picks, were all the best players on their teams their whole lives, you know, and impactful players even in major, junior, college, and they come in. I find the adjustment number one to be mostly they got to get a little bigger, stronger, faster, right? Like that's just the way it is going, and very interesting how hard these guys work all the time. So when they come into you, you just see the change in their body from their first year to the second year to their third year. And you're like, yo, this guy's a man now. He's ready to go. And that's why it takes a little bit of time. And players are getting after it younger and younger, and on the physical development from the day they get drafted. It just takes time. It takes those off seasons to put on size and strength, learn how to eat right, how to take care of yourself, how to do all those things. On the mental side of it, it's an acceptance that, like, they're no different than, like I said, oh, I thought I was going to go from junior to the American League. Then that's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And they have this timeline where it's a rush, and they start comparing themselves to other players. Well, why is player X going to the NHL in Florida? I was as good as him in junior. Why ain't I going in Columbus? You know,
Yeah.
and that's not the way it works. Like, it's so you have to. There's got to be some trust involved. Like, the organization has to talk to the player and say, "This is where we see you," you know, and then an accountability by the player to understand, okay, they're right. Like, this is the work they want me to do. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, and then hopefully get this crack next year, or 18 months from now, or 3 months from now, whatever it is.
Right.
And it ends up being about consistency and trustworthiness, and they all have the ability to play in the NHL, and it's the guys that kind of stay after and stick with it and just fine tune their game and become more responsible. It seems like the guys that get to the next level. So that drive, the passion to be consistent and just sort of do whatever it takes to get there is something that you see in a lot of guys that kind of pushes them over the top.
Yeah, you say you said trust a couple times, and to me, that's my ears perk up when I hear that, because I think that's as a player, and I mean, I'm coaching now too, obviously not at your level, but I'm coaching young kids. I'm coaching kids individually, to try and get to the next level and be the best that they can be. And I think that word is just so imperative. And I'd like you to maybe talk about that a little bit more, just because I think as a player, when you feel that head guy, the coach or even assistant coach or whatever role that is, like, they really got your back, like they really want you to succeed, and they really, like, your best interest is what they're trying to get, and maybe not like some ulterior motive of, you know what I mean, like fill a spot somewhere within the organization or whatever. You're getting lip service. Like, I think if you can get that trust factor, that buy-in, that this guy cares about me and now it's way easier to follow through on whatever that messages. You know what I mean? Like, do you find that as a coach, like when you get that trust and guys believe in you, now you got that little extra from them, and they go to bat?
Oh, for sure. Happy players are productive players, right? That's so. And when you're in the American League, it's almost a little bit easier because they're one step away from their goal. Okay, your interests are aligned. The organization, general manager, the NHL team wants, like, I have to develop player X, Y, and Z, and you're spending time with X, Y, all of them really, but there's certain guys that they're keying on, their top draft picks. Like, how is he doing? So you're spending time with them, and they know that you're trying to get in the NHL, And if they're taking it serious, they're trying to listen to what you're saying, and they're working on their game, and they're trying to implement things that you're talking about in their game. And when they don't put the commitment in, then there has to be some accountability there. But I find the players now are so driven and committed, and like, and every once in a while a guy will waver off, and you got to snap him back in line, and to keep this upward trajectory going. Yep. So that's the easier part. When you went once, now the difference is you get an NHL and you got young guys coming in, and again, they've been the best players on the team their whole lives, and they come in, and now they're like, well, just for example, they want to play on the power play, or they want, but there's the reality of it is now you have to, it's about winning. It's not about me developing you. You're here. That's part of it to make our team better, but it's about winning. It's a results-oriented league, and you have to beat someone out of that spot, or show the potential to beat them out of that spot for us to use you there. Otherwise, you're gonna have to be patient for an injury, or when this guy's struggling, we'll try to get you in there. You're gonna have to make the most of the opportunities, but they could be, long time in between. There's no real, direct, immediate result that I can offer you if so there's a level of trust and patience in there. And players are very communicative now. Like, they want to, if that's the word, whatever that was, they want to talk to you, and you have to talk with them and try and stick to the plan that you set out for them in the NHL. Right. You have to, if they say, well, if I play real good, can I get some of this? And you're like, yeah. And then they play real well, and 2 weeks later, you haven't given an opportunity someplace. They'll come back and ask you about it.
Right. That's so great. I think there's greater accountability. And I think, you've seen it as a player. I think that's been one of the biggest evolutions within the coaching realm, of, that that communication, that buy-in, right? It's not an us versus them really anymore. It's an us together,
Right.
doing things. And I think you said it beautifully there. Like there's an accountability on both sides. I mean, if the player asks the question, he's going to get an answer, right? And now he's going to have to deliver on that. And there's accountability there. And if you kind of gave him this idea, or promise is the wrong word, but a suggestion of what would
Right.
happen if he does do this, you're accountable to that too. So I mean, I think
100%.
that's a good way to operate personally.
Yeah, it's how it's checks and balances. It's how everything
Yeah.
stays, things move forward, and that's why I try to just shoot my players straight, and you try to get it there's only so much ice time, and that's what they're trying to earn: opportunity and ice time. They're in the NHL. The guys but they're competitive guys. They want to play more. They want to have a bigger impact, and that so everything ends up, everything is earned. It's not just given away. And it's just being able to, that's where the really good coaches, they recognize it. They're so fine-tuned in how they deploy their ice time, and how they get the most out of their players. It's there's definitely a science to it, and the guys
That's the
that have
biggest chip, right?
success. Yeah, exactly.
Almost. I mean, is there another chip? Like it's almost the only chip, isn't it? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, they're all
Yeah.
wanting it, right? And like that's really
Yeah.
how you earn it, how you give it to them, how you show them, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's true.
Um, so I want to get into Colorado for sure. I mean, so you end up winning another championship with Lake Erie,
Yeah.
which looked like it must have been an amazing season. Like I dug in there a little bit. I mean, your leading point guy that year had like what 48 points, I think, or something, and
Yeah.
in like 70 games, and you guys won a championship. Like, was it just unbelievable goaltending? I saw the names on your goaltending list there. Like, how did you guys go about
Yeah.
constructing that championship?
So incredible team. That was an incredible team. Um, just the right that team had been building together for a couple of years. Lots of young draft picks that stepped in and played major roles for us in some skill positions. Like, we were kind of spread out all over the place with what our draft picks did for us. Um, Goaltending was good. Leadership was incredible. Guys that are now coaching in the NHL. Ryan Craig was our captain. He's an assistant coach in Vegas. And just the development of our young players over 2 years to kind of step into the roles they did that year, that was sort of their peak. And then a bunch of them ended up going to Columbus after we won and are still there. And we weren't really getting talked about a lot during the season. There was some real powerhouse teams out west and out east, and we started to come along second half of the year. We put this run together at the end of the year, and we had a breakdown in a playoff game that cost us one or two games there,
Yeah,
or we could have we were this close to sweeping the entire playoffs. It
that's
was
unbelievable.
it was a crazy group of guys, highly driven, self-motivated guys that held each other accountable, and that leadership within the room, it was just like so focused, and the buy-in from all the young guys to like do the right things was
That's
incredible.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's super
Yeah.
cool. And nothing like winning to bring guys together too, right? And to make it
No.
memorable and make it special. Like, what a run. I still don't get like, how did you guys score goals? Like that's, I've never seen that on a championship team before. Your top guy had like a half a point a game. Like, it was just
Yeah.
it was that spread out. It was that deep, or what?
Yeah. It was. We just didn't have. Um, we just didn't have that superstar power, but we were deep through. It's almost like we had 4 second lines,
Right. Yeah.
and everyone could play. And then our power play was good enough. Our penalty kill, the special teams, our commitment to check, and just the way it was, just like, didn't matter who was going on the ice. Everyone just played the same way. Really good in our structure, just highly committed to the way we wanted to play. That
Awesome.
was the most rewarding year, like, like I've won 2 championships as a coach, and they're both a little bit different. My first one in South Carolina, that second year, that was so rewarding because when you're coaching down there, you're the general manager. So I'm coming to you as a player and I'm saying, no, you got to come to South Carolina. This is what we're going to be like, and this is what it's like to play here. And you've got 5 other offers, and then you choose to come play for us there.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy that's selling you that. To win a year or 2 later is so rewarding because you can just see all those guys and how happy they are that they've come, and
Yeah.
a lot of them live down there. So those are like life-changing decisions that you had an impact on.
Yeah.
And then in the American League, it's to win that year, and the togetherness of our group is sort of everything I ever imagined. It's what I remember from the championships when I played, this sort of core group that was so together. The inclusiveness of the group was amazing. And then to win, and then within a couple months to see 8-9 guys go to Columbus and be playing there the next year was awesome, because you're selling it. You just keep doing it. You're going to play in the NHL. You're going to play for, we will win, and you will play in Columbus. And then when you're that's what you're hoping for, right? And then when it happens, it's just extremely rewarding to see all those guys go, and to get to just talk with all those players that played for me that year is amazing.
That is so cool. You keep saying the players, right? That the players were just so committed, and they held each other accountable, and they were so tight as a group. Like there is an element of I think organic. There's an organic element to that with teams sometimes, but like you've removed yourself from this process, maybe intentionally, maybe humbly. But like as a coach, you mean you're involved in that? Like how did you go about building that and encouraging them to believe in that?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. The reason I remove myself from it is, like, number one, I just try to be myself, right? I have a picture of the way that I'm convinced that our team has to do things in order to have success. So I review it in my head, like I just see this is what we have to do. This is how good this guy has to be, and this guy, and this is the roles they have to play. And you obviously you're open to changing some of those things, but at some point, it's all like, I've had horrible seasons where I feel like I've taught the exact same things as championship seasons that I've had. Okay. It ultimately comes down to, like, once you get the personnel, it becomes the mental part of it, the buy-in, the consistency, the drive, the passion, right? And then there's an element of luck that has to come together and I just felt like I coached the same things the year before. Yeah, you're going to learn, and you're going to make some adjustments, but the basis of my mindset and the foundation was the same, and we didn't have success. But as just that buy-in puts your team over the top, because it's done right every time, all the time. And if it wasn't, everyone knows it. And, you try and reflect on it, and, well, how did you handle the accountability way better this year than that year? And it feels the same, but you've obviously done something better on the championship years. And to me, that's mostly players. It's not the coaching staff doing that.
Right. Well, maybe there's momentum to it too, right? Because it kind of, the more consistent you are with the message, right? And now you said, if you do have this vision and this idea of what's right, and you don't waver from that. So it's not like you come back the next year and you're reinventing the wheel on them, like they're hearing the same thing again. Like maybe that becomes part of it, like after you won that, that was when you got your opportunity in the NHL. And again, a championship rewards promotion, right? It's amazing how that happens. So winning does matter, bringing people together. You said those guys graduated to Columbus, and now you graduate to Denver. But you graduated into a horrific season. right? You mean like that was a tough year. I mean, and it's kind of interesting now going through your history that, I mean, this is kind of a little bit of history repeating itself, right? This new league,
Yeah.
this new level, and it's like, oh, here we go. Like, how was that? Now you can look back on that, a few years later and review that first season. What was that all about for you?
So that was scary. Like as that season started to progress, I held on to a few things closely, which I'll touch on in a minute. But that was the scariest point of my professional career, playing or coaching, because as a player, Western Hockey League, doing good, come to the ECHL -82, win 14 games. You're as a player, especially a young guy, you're like, I'm going to control what I can control. I'm going to be in shape. I'm going to work. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to, like, go before practice, after practice. You do what you got to do, because you're going to get another opportunity the next year. Like, I'm a young kid. Like, I can go, I'm confident that as a player, taking care of myself, that I could go make a hockey team
Right.
and play on a good team. Right. But as a coach, there's so many things that you're trying to control, and the opportunity isn't as easy. I worked my whole life basically as a coach to get an NHL opportunity. And like I talked about, felt like I put myself in a position where I could go and have success and stay, not just go for the cup of coffee and come back.
Right.
Well, the NHL is not a forgiving league, right? So it's about winning, and to go through, I think it's the worst season post expansion of an NHL team. I thought I was like going to get punted, and then maybe my NHL dream or coaching career could be done. You don't
Right.
know when another opportunity is going to come. I could be in the minors again forever and never get another opportunity, or it could
Because you
take
see it
10
happen.
years,
It
Yeah,
happens.
it
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I held on to a couple of things, and one of them was I came into camp late. We we um, we put together a plan. We get the other coaches that came in right away, and we started talking and grinding. And we had a great training camp. Exhibition, as we all know, doesn't mean anything. I think we went undefeated in exhibition, like 6 or 7-0. We start regular season, and we play out. I think we were 9-9-2 at a point, and then we had some injury troubles. Like, we weren't the deepest team, so we lost a top defenseman in Johnson, and we lost our goalie in Varlamov, who had been like, had a huge impact on the team's success in the previous years and was
Right.
hitting his prime. And we lost those guys for basically the year, and we never recovered. We at 9, and we only won, what was it, 22 games,
Yeah.
22 games. So we played another 60 games and only, won another 13. So it was tough. It was scary. But Joe gave me the opportunity to come back. And from that point, it was about getting younger, faster, getting the team back to playing the way, this exciting brand of hockey, on our toes. That basically the way they had played, a dynamic offensive team, the way they had played when they won their cups,
Right.
when Joe was playing.
We talk about trust again, though. I mean, there's some trust, right, from Joe, and like during that season, it's not going how you envisioned it at all, right? It's not going how probably Joe envisioned it at all. You're struggling, you're hanging on essentially, right? Wondering what your future is going to hold. Like, how was that with Joe? Was he reassuring during that time, or is it not like that at that level, or like how was the personal relationship there with you? Were you looking over your shoulder, or were you feeling relatively okay with where you were at?
I'll be honest with you. I was feeling okay with where I was at, because I just told myself, like, it's not in my control really, the decision that Joe had to bring me back or not. Like, you worry about it. And you're like, oh God, this is, what's going to happen. But I just said to myself again, like, I'm going to do the best job that I can do. to get our team prepared, to adjust if we could, like, and there was a lot of things that we, obviously I didn't do a good enough job, but there was just things that the league is so tough that if you're just lacking, like you're just lacking a little bit of scoring, you could lose 51 goal games and and end up with 30 wins. It's just, there's no nights off. And that we felt like, or I felt like that's a little bit where we were at. Like, even if guys had the right intentions, that we're just missing that little added push to win games. The message from Joe was, these are our core guys: Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen, Barry. Let's make sure we focus on, this is going to be a tough year, continues to be a tough year, but let's focus on what these guys need to do in order to have success quickly next year, and like, just keep coaching, keep grinding. I promised him I would do that, and we just kept trying to talk about things we need. Why isn't this working? Lots of dialogue. And when he gave me the opportunity to come back, the next year we were one of the youngest, if not the youngest teams in the league. And they had us set in preseason polls to finish with like 70 points or whatever. And we went to 95 and made the playoffs. It was a fun year. No pressure on the players, like, just going and having fun. And all of our older core group had left, and the guys, the Nate McKinnons of our team, landed. So they really stepped up in the leadership role and became their team. It was a necessary turnover. We had great guys the year before and great leaders, Jerome McGinley. It just, the leadership needed to go to our young guys, and they were stepping into the prime years of their career, and they've been awesome since.
That actually brings up an interesting question for me, because that second year, so you get to come back. The expectations, obviously, from Joe in that first year, maybe, I mean, you guys didn't reach them collectively as a team, but obviously it wasn't like you guys thought you were going to make the playoffs. And once you sort of realized where you were at, it was like, okay, let's focus on this. Like, let's make this be the win this year, and which you guys did. But then you come back, and you're now in your second year, you have to deal with a public trade request by, one of your core guys, or supposedly core guys. How did you deal with that, not only on a personal level with Duchesne himself, but like also with the other guys within that room there that are, trying to still be Avalanche and trying to still win games for the Avalanche?
Yeah, you know what? It was relatively easy, I think, because that might have weighed on the players a little bit more than me, but I thought Matt was really professional. Like, if the fit isn't right for everyone all the time. I don't take that personal for me or for the Avalanche or Matt. I don't look negatively upon Matt or any other player because they feel like they want to go someplace else or it's better for them. I think you have to do what's best for yourself while being committed to your team. So if you feel like it's a better fit someplace else, then go do that. As a general manager in the ECHL, I would grant that. And, whether it's a lot, there's addition by subtraction. There's, different ways you can look at it. Matt was a really good player, and Joe was going to do what was best for the team in accommodating that. And hopefully it works on both sides of it,
right. Well, it obviously did, right? So
yeah. And
you guys were super successful that year. But just a quick question. I mean, coaching, so you're a rookie coach in the NHL. Don't know exactly how old you would have been that year, but you have Joe McGinley on that team, which I wrote down, who, he was what, 5 years younger than you, right? Had a 1,400 game NHL career, Hall of Famer. Like, how was that experience? And then, like, with Jerome leaving, you said there was this turnover, and now Nate McKinnon, who's like a 22-year-old guy, is your like your leader, or Landeskog, like these younger guys now. Did you find it had to be different relating to both of them? But like, how was that, having like the Jerome and then having like this younger echelon then come up the next year?
Well, I thought those guys my first year were awesome. It was just Francois Beauchemin, Jerome McGinley, Feder Tootin, to name a few. Like, these guys are just there's so much experience and knowledge and like leadership abilities. But like anything, it's when it's not going well and you're the you know the captain of the ship, it's that's stressful. Like you want it to go well for those guys. I thought they handled it great. They were all at different points of their careers. Like some went on to play another year or not. Like a lot of guys sort of retire and come to the end of their contracts. There's uncertainty there. I learned a lot from those guys just by sort of observing it. But it was a tough year. It was a frustrating year, not just for me, but more so for the players.
Right.
They're rounding out their careers, and it's just not going well, and for them personally or for the team, and it just gets frustrating. But I have a lot of respect for those guys, and they kept playing hard during the year. We just weren't quite good enough to get any kind of traction.
Yeah.
The following year, like now Nathan McKinnon only being 22, but he'd already played in the league 4 years, and Landy stepping into his leadership role. And the guys got Nico Ranton and Tyson Berry, and that's just the new core. Everyone kind of knew it was going that way, and we had to fill in with some of our draft picks and some free agents around it. And so to hand that over to our guys, I was extremely happy with the way they handled it, took ownership of it.
Yep.
And the young guys that we brought in gave that younger core excitement. They saw that we changed a lot. I think we got 12 new players, I think, my second year, that's over half the team, which is crazy to think of that turnover. But it was exciting. They fed off each other, and we didn't have a lot of pressure, like I said, to succeed that year after the previous year. And then we just were kind of the underdogs, just going and having fun. And it's when you're loose like that and free and you have a little bit of confidence, I was proud of that group to get 95 points and play Nashville to 6 games in the playoffs. It was a fun team to coach.
Yeah, that's great. Are you, as the head guy in Colorado, when it comes to camp and architecting that team? Obviously I know like the draft picks and there's the development side and the GM is involved, but are you picking the guys that are on that team? Is that fall on your shoulders? Who's going where?
No.
We
have dialogue. Like we talk, Joe and I and his staff and my staff talk about a lot of things, like our views, their views. But I've coached the players that he gives me. You know what I mean? That's the way I like it. Like we'll talk about call up guys, like do I need a winger, center, how you want to use them? Have you thought about moving this guy here? Like there's lots of dialogue. But yeah, I'm the coach. He's the general manager. They put the team together, and like I coach players I have, and I have a easier time compartmentalizing that. Like in the media, you'll get injuries and players will be out, and everyone wants to talk about the injured guys, because they could be your star players or whatever. But like I don't have any control over that. So I don't spend 2 seconds even worrying about that. This is our roster and this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to go play. Like I'm focused on that, not all the other stuff, which in a sense makes my job easier. I don't worry about the things that aren't in my control, because I got enough to do with the things that are.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, that's a great way to look at it too. I mean, control what you can. I was just wondering from the relationship side, because there is times as a player where you're going to have a coach that maybe you don't feel like you get along with, or maybe the coach, you feel like the coach doesn't like you, and whether it's perceived or real, if as a coach, do you have control over whether that guy's on your bench or not, or can you bring up somebody that, you think that you would have a better fit with?
Oh yeah, well, I have a lot of say in how we deploy our players. Like how much ice time I give this guy or that. Yeah. And like I said before, like my goal is happy players are productive players, right? So as long as that's earned, and there can be some opportunity given to see if a guy will take a step, and however you manage it. But what we try to do here is we try to keep that open door policy. Like if I'm just not seeing eye to eye with player X, then go talk to Joe and see if he sees it different, or like me, because I could be wrong, and I'll talk to my assistant coaches and the staff, and let's come back in and talk a few days later. But
Right.
if Joe sees it different, then he'll come talk to me, or all three of us can sit down. But like, this is what the information I'm giving you, and this is what I'm seeing and what I'm not seeing, and and then we can come around it, just so, because everyone has to be on the same page in order to have success. So there's no,
Yeah.
if guys are unhappy or I'm not doing something correctly, and sometimes the players are right. Like we're not perfect as coaches, it's good to get a little outside perspective or another opinion, especially from a guy like Joe. I mean,
Yeah.
with his background and stuff, he has a lot of insight, and Chris is assistant general manager, Craig Billington. Everyone has a little bit different way of looking at things. So the more you kind of talk about them, usually you can come up with a solution for a lot of things.
There's always a solution, right? There is.
Yeah.
There's always a solution. I think that's great. And I love that you even admit that. I mean, because it's so right to admit it. We get caught in our habits. We get caught in our perceptions sometimes. And, sometimes there's a lot of guys too as a coach. I mean, it's amazing coaching minor hockey right now. It's like there's a lot of players on that bench, right? Like to really know how each guy is like operating at that particular point, and to not have a bias from before, like where you've earned trust, and like to reward that guy in the moment. It's definitely a talent and a skill to recognize that, and we don't always get it right. So I can understand where you're coming from there. Would love to fast forward a little bit to the end of that year. I mean, you get nominated for the Jack Adams. Like, was that just like a holy shit moment? Like, you've gone from this, this whole journey, right? And I love the journey, and now you're here, and you've had this 47-point increase or whatever it is, and you're nominated among your peers as being one of the best coaches in the NHL. Like, how did that feel?
Well, I mean, it's just I was just so happy with the way their team played, to be honest with you. Like I said, that was such a fun year. And part of that, again, when the pressure's on, things tighten up, and we didn't have a lot of pressure. I think, again, it was the collective group. We had that new leadership group, that young core, the McKinnons, Landis, those guys just went through a year to forget. And so did I. And so we were all in that together. So like, that's a conscious decision every day to be like, that's not going to happen again. This is what we're going to do. And Joe, same thing. Implanting players, free agents, college signings, draft picks, bringing them in just to change the whole dynamic of our team, and then to have it sort of snowball and gain momentum as the year went on. It was great. So to get nominated for that, like I can, every year I can just be like, now as being a coach, I look at teams and everyone's like, oh, well, Tampa should be good. I mean, they got all these guys, but that's not the way it works. There's so many teams that are so close, just a hair different than each other, to be able to have any type of success, and sometimes just even to push it another level, to make another round of the playoffs, or to finish with 5 more points, or to win a division. I look and I said there could be any 15 coaches every year that'd be like, that guy's a shoe in for the coach of the year. So just to have someone say, well, they did a really good job there, that's a big turnaround in a year, was pretty rewarding, just because I needed it to be personally, for my mental, just to prove to myself that, okay, what you've been doing and what you've sort of tried to learn and mold as the way you coach, that it will work, and you just keep working at it, you can have some success. I needed that from a mental standpoint. And I think probably if you ask them, the players that I was coaching probably needed us to have success in order to keep believing in myself as a coach,
Right.
that we could move forward and continue to grow.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there has to be a parallel that you believe that you're at the right level, right? I mean, that whole, like, you've now kind of proven to yourself, because I remember as a player stepping into that league, it's like you think that you worked all your life to be there, but like you don't quite, you're not sure, and is this where I'm supposed to be? And like to be validated like that in your second year, and to feel like, hey, yeah, I'm in the right spot, I do belong here, and then to get recognized would be awesome. And then as far as the next two seasons, I mean, I don't really want to fast forward through them, but like last year was super special. And like for me, I know you've been around these guys, right? And you've watched Nathan MacKinnon mature as a player and as a human being, and you're involved in that development, and all of these guys around him, these young guys that are becoming men kind of before your eyes, and figuring out how this league works and how to be the best that they can be in it. But I watched that playoff series, and my God, like I had no idea. Like Nathan MacKinnon, for instance, was that good. Like the power and like the speed and the tenacity, and like that team was just really, really fun to watch. And then it takes San Jose to 7 games. Like walk me through that playoff time, and like how that whole thing is built up to that. How was last year in the playoffs?
Yeah, so well, it was a lot of fun. Number one is the year before we had 95 points, and we got in. We had to win the last game of the year to get in. We beat St. Louis at home and got in. And then last year, we I think there was 1 game left when we clinched. So it was a grind the whole time. And we go into Calgary and we lose right out of the gate. And then we just I thought the coaching staff did an awesome job identifying what we didn't do well, what we needed to do to try and win, and we sold it to the players. And there was that buy-in had to be immediate, or we weren't going to win.
Yeah.
You're not going to drop 2 games right away and then try and grind your way back. And it was immediate. The next game we saw a completely different team. We resold what we felt like we had to do, and showed our guys, and we were feeling really good coming out of game 2. So that adjustment was made by them right over, or by us as a group, and the buy-in was immediate from them, and it led to success. Then we go into San Jose, and every team is a different challenge for this reason or that reason. And it had been a while since, you kind of have to go from one thing to another, for me and for our team. So going into that second playoff series, we come out playing like we were playing Calgary, and we weren't having any success at all against San Jose. And so we identify some things again, and the adjustments made by our team, and the maturity of our young team to go, not be stubborn and keep trying to play the same way, to be like, coaches are on this, and then they have their own ideas, and then we implement it all in a short period of time. We started to have more and more success as the series went on. So I was really proud of our group for not only the adjustments and buy-in, but the maturity that they showed through the first round, and then into the second round, and sort of trying to have success there. And it was close. That was really close to be, for us being able to move on. Obviously, end of game 7, we have 2 or 3 chances at the end of the game, and
Right.
Had gone through some adversity in that game with the goal called back, and Nathan leaving for a little while with an injury, and then coming back out. It wasn't the ideal game for us, how we would draw it up, but real proud of the team. So now it's just trying to take that next step forward. And every year is different. You can run into a first round opponent that's really tough this year and be out, or you can try and build on that and get some success, and trying to get that momentum going quickly again this year will be the key to coming out of this.
It's tough to teach experience, man, right? I think they've got that now, right? They've had the first round loss, they've gotten into the second round, got to set game 7, you guys. I think that as a group, because you have that core there that you're all growing together. I know you must be really excited about this season and what's to come. You know, I think that addition with Kadri. I mean, we didn't really talk about your current lineup, but I mean, you got a little bit more, you know, a little bit more sandpaper there, you know, kind of fills out that side a little bit. It seems like, you know, Makar is obviously just a special player back there helping you out. And you have, you know, your core guys with Rantanen and McKinnon and Gab there that are all a year older and a year stronger and a year better. Like it must be a fun group to be around right now.
It is. It's been a really driven group, you know, like we've had, I look at our record and it's, you know, we were scratching and clawing to get in last game of the year and second last game of the year. And here we're sitting in a real good spot and battling for the conference and, you know, first in the conference and second overall in the whole league. And that just to me was the step our team took. We had a lot of injuries early. We had a lot of injuries late, and our record through those times when we were missing multiple key guys, like 6, 7, 8 guys at a time out of our roster, really kind of showed the depth that Joe brought in, and we needed some depth scoring up front, and just the growth of the consistency in which our guys played with, and also the belief that we can win every night. Like we're not just out there seeing what happens and putting our best foot forward. That there was a you know, a drive to us and a belief that we could win every night, and that was our goal, and that we were going to try not to take any of those nights off. And that's that's the difference between scratching and clawing to get in or fighting for the conference lead, you know. So there's been a lot of growth there, and now we have to try and continue that through the playoffs.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, maybe we'll just wrap up with that. We've been a little bit over. I apologize for that, but my gosh, we know how you keep going. But I mean, with this new format, so 24 teams, it just got released. I mean, a few days ago. I'm sure. I mean, the way the media leaking stuff gets released, you probably don't know too much more than any of us know, other than the fact that you guys are in one of the top 4 spots. And you guys play each other one time to see where the seeding ends up. Like how right now, and with what you know, how do you see yourself preparing for what's to come?
Yeah, well, so we know that we're going to play St. Louis, Dallas, and Vegas, and then we'll get seated in the top spots. And then I really have no idea how the other part's going, if it's getting bracketed, reseeded. So we don't know anything about the other opponents. We're basically treating this like, you know, a training camp. We'll come back and our guys will have been skating a little bit before camp. We'll adjust how long we want to go on ice, but get back to our structure, get playing. And then to me, it's about getting our guys emotionally invested. We are you know, we know we can seed anywhere from 1 to 4, and we have no idea who our opponent's going to be. So we're basically taking the way I look at it is we're taking an 82 game schedule and cutting it down to say, well, you're in the playoffs, but this is what you're fighting for 3 games in playoffs. So it should be, to me, if I'm a player, I'm excited. It's you know, that work is kind of behind us, and now we're just right into the funnest time of the year, and like to, you know, seed as high as we can, and then see where the chips falls to who we're playing, and away we go. You know, I think it should be easy to get emotionally invested. The team that does that and you know, can get back up to speed the quickest is going to have the best chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, the emotional investment. I mean, the guys are going to they're professional and they're excited, but I mean, never in the history of the NHL has this happened where I mean, I don't know how long it's going to be, 2 months, 3 months, like without anything. And then you're going to play 3 games and then you're going to start the Stanley Cup final. Like it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it that way, but it's like pitter patter. Everyone's playing on the same format and you just got to get her done. Right.
Yeah, that's it. I think that, you know, everyone wants to play. Everyone wants closure. They want their opportunity at the Cup, and that, you know, everyone's hungry to get it started. And take their crack at it. You know, that's why you play the 82 games, is to get to this point. So without the closure or not having the playoffs, it just seems like, you know, like it's a waste, you know, like this is why you're doing it and why the fans watch it. So, you know, what's exciting about it is everyone will be healthy. You know, for every team, you're going to see all the best players start out at the most important time of the year and get after it. So I think the intensity of these games is gonna come quickly out of nowhere, and
it's gonna be
players are gonna realize what it's all about, because you're jumping into games that have immediate impact on your success in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, it's going to be wild. Well, I'll cut it off at that. I wish you nothing but the most success. It's been really fun to follow your journey, the team's journey. It's a really fun brand of hockey to watch, what you guys got going there, and your staff. Say hi to Nolan for me. We didn't even touch on that. Now he's with you there in Colorado. That's awesome to see. And yeah, I think this year is going to be a special year, and for a lot of reasons, you know, and it's going to be a memorable one for a lot of reasons too. And what a great year it would be to win the whole darn thing. So hopefully you keep rolling there, Bedsy, and thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Pods. Really appreciate you having me on. Great talk.
Sweet. And hold on. Well, time flies when you're having fun. It totally seems the way it go. I never intend for these conversations to last so long, but when you're having real conversations with real people about cool topics, boy, it just seems like we can go on forever. And with Jared, I do thank you again, if you listen to this, for your generosity, how gracious you were with your time, how open you were with your stories and with your journey. And that's what it's all about here, is to have the listeners understand that at the end of the day, this is real people trying to do great things, and what it takes for real people to do great things. And your story, Jared's story, was no different than most of ours. You know, there was the struggles of turning pro. There was the minus 82 season, the ups and downs with the minors, and the unsuccessful attempt at his first head coaching job in the AHL. But we persevere and we move on and we learn. And we're grateful for our opportunities when we do, and things can work out, and they've definitely worked out for Jared Bednar. I love what he's doing there. I love what he's about. I love that team culture that he's creating there, and it's just a pleasure to watch them, and a pleasure to watch guys like Jared be successful in this game that we all love so much. So thank you again for listening. What an amazing episode, and until next time, play hard and keep your head up.